What's going on, Bottom Line viewers? It's Dylan and Mitch once again, back again for March Madness. We're here for Sweet 16, day one. I should be in a little bit happier of a mood, but god damn it, my computer is ass. So I appreciate Mitch for starting out the hangout. But we're here to talk a little more positively. We had some pretty good basketball games and one blowout. So overall, pretty interesting day of basketball. I thought this was going to be the worst of the 2 days, but it then actually turned out to be a pretty interesting day with some upsets, perhaps, and some really good basketball overall. So, Mitch, just right off the bat, what did you think of this day one of the Sweet 16?
I thought it was pretty good. I mean, it wasn't the greatest basketball ever, but there were a couple really close games that we'll get into. Actually, three that went within 3 points. So that's a pretty good day overall. Now, if you looked at the scores were probably better than the games themselves in terms of entertainment, and we'll get into the reasons why as we go through each individual game. But it was still, fun to watch, and I just love the way that in March Madness and in this tournament, the intensity continues to amp up every single game and every single round. We see the defense amp up. We see the offense get a little bit smoother. And we just see better overall basketball and more higher compete level, which I love seeing out of March Madness.
Yeah, like you said, there's a bunch of entertaining games. We had 3 of the 4 games combined difference of 5 points in those 3 games. So that's pretty interesting. One was an absolute blowout. We'll talk about that later on. It was the piss match of these games. But, there were some pretty entertaining moments. Some fun chaos, as I like to put it, because some of these games were not the smoothest to watch. But that's the fun in NCAA basketball. They're not obviously 100% in terms of NBA quality, where everything's supposed to flow at 100%. So it's a little bit more reckless. It's a little bit more fun to watch, and you're not as analytical because we're just 2 guys watching TV in good basketball and then coming on here and talking about it. It's pretty much how it works. Let's go ahead and get into the first game. We were looking forward to this one in particular because a certain Wolverines team was here to make a rise, make an impact. Unfortunately, their run is closed. Oregon, very sad. It was hard to watch. Oregon picks up the 1-point victory, 69-68. The first half of basketball I could describe as a sloppy mess. Shooting-wise, these teams were absolutely in a debacle situation. Oregon scored 35 points in the first half. Michigan scored 33. If it wasn't for Derek Walton and Tyler Dorsey, this game might have been even worse in terms of shooting. Walton had 20 points, and Dorsey had 20 points. So just imagine the first half of basketball with Wagner shooting threes when he's a big man and doesn't need to fucking shoot threes most of the time. I think he shot probably 6 or 8 threes, somewhere around there, and all but one. Very sad. He was just awful. And most of this game considered it was very weird. Michigan didn't score a lot in the paint. They were trying to score a lot of outside shots, and sometimes it was very hurry up and very rushed, and that's why they didn't make the shots. And Oregon didn't really shoot outside of the paint, and when they did, they pretty much missed a lot, like a lot. So they're obviously their goal was to score in the paint, and they did so, and I guess they did it 1 more point better than Oregon. To really give analysis of both teams, I would say Michigan still had some good things about them, but they were just trying to go too fast, too hard. And I know that's something about basketball, especially in college, that you see a lot, but in this situation, they were just going way too fast. And I think they needed to slow it down, get more of the tempo, and kind of create some kind of play, more drawn-out plays. And for Oregon, their shooting was just very sloppy. Their defense helped them out later on in the game, but, down the stretch, they just weren't making big shots, but I guess they made 1 more that was critical to their win against Oregon. So, Mitch, what did you pick out of these 2 teams in this game?
I picked out that I thought that 2 players stole the show, 1 on each side. We'll get into that. And, the rest of the players didn't show up. There were some big names here, like a Wagner on Michigan, who had a great game a round earlier, did not show up. 3 for 10, bro. 0 from 4 from 3-point. He had 7 points grand total, 5 rebounds, a goose egg in the assist column, and he just played like absolute poop.
He was
at least Walton stepped up. He was 6 for 10, and more importantly, he hit 3 threes. DJ Wilson also hit 4 threes, which helped them out. In this game in particular, I just saw a lot of chucking. I saw a lot of just 3-point shots. The defense was pretty good, and I think the defense especially is something that we'll see more and more of as we get into more competitive games, but especially in the Sweet 16, defense ruled the day. And Oregon's defense, I thought, was just a little bit more consistent as the game continued on. Michigan had a chance at the end of the game to win it. They didn't make the shot. They didn't make the stop. Oregon made the clutch plays, and that was ultimately the difference. These two teams were very even, but I got to hand it to the best player on the court, who was Dorsey. He was 7 for 15, had 5 3-pointers, 20 points, and I think he was basically the difference between Oregon and Michigan. If Dorsey was playing on Michigan and you flipped another player on, to Oregon, Michigan probably would have won. I think he was just the biggest difference maker, and he continues his hot streak in the March Madness tournament. It's going to be interesting to see how Oregon does. I thought clearly that these two teams, like the winner, Oregon, in this game, I thought looked clearly like the worst team of the winners today. I don't know how you feel about that, but that's how I felt.
Oh, I agree. I mean, their defense was solid at some points, but they were really not connecting. And if it wasn't for Tyler Dorsey, they wouldn't be stepping up at all. So, yeah, I agree. Derek Walton should get a nice consideration. He just missed the 3-pointer to win the game for Michigan. So, that's saddening. They wanted to continue their run.
Hey,
but Oregon
it wasn't his fault, bro. He did all he could. The rest of the players around him who were expected to step up didn't step up. And I want to give a shout out to, I believe it was Bell, who made a nice move inside and got the rebound, I think.
Yeah, that was with the minute 59 left.
Yeah, he made a huge play there. That also enabled them to win. He had 13 rebounds in the game, a steal, 2 blocks, an assist, and 16 points. So just as big as Dorsey was, I think Bell was kind of that unsung hero of the game as well.
You talked about people stepping up for Michigan and only 1 guy or 2 guys stepping up. It's kind of like WWE these days. You're only going to get that if you know wrestling. But, yeah, so it's interesting. Michigan wasn't able to step up. And much like the company of today of wrestling, they're going to fall. And we're going to see Oregon move on. We'll talk about their opponents, which is going to be very interesting later on. So let's get to the second game. We just talked about one of the worst performances by a winning team. Let's talk about somebody that may be impressed or maybe disappointed in this area. West Virginia and Gonzaga. 4 seed and 1 seed. West Virginia, coming into this game, we had a lot of question marks. They just beat a Notre Dame team that you could really say wasn't as successful as some of these other teams that moved on in terms of who they played in the round before. And Gonzaga, they've had a little bit of an easier road. They beat a Northwestern team that had a lot of hype to them. And they've never really been looked at as a team that can move on farther along. They've never been in the Final Four before, so there's a lot of questions. But they were able to survive this game with an even lower score than the first game, 61-58. The defense dominate? Absolutely. But Jordan Matthews came up with the clutch 3 for Gonzaga. No, not Philadelphia wide receiver Jordan Matthews. We're talking about Gonzaga over here. That was a clutch 3 from Jordan Matthews. That was pretty nice to see with about a minute to go. And these teams were really just going at it. Defense was the key in this game. Javon Carter for West Virginia did score 21 points. The leading scorer for Gonzaga, Jonathan Williams with 13. So Gonzaga's...
Well, 3 players had 13 points.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, there's their big man. I got to pull up the box score.
The man with the beard.
The man with the beard, Karnowski had 13. And
Jordan Matthews.
And Matthews also had 13. So, there are a couple of guys were putting it in, but it wasn't the biggest offensive scoring attack from Gonzaga all year, who came into this game, I believe, 35-1. So, they're looked at as probably the best, kind of the best team left in the tournament, because Villanova was ranked number 1 overall, and I would believe Gonzaga would be number 2. So, they did some good things. They were able to play good defense down the stretch, which I've emphasized a lot is going to be key. In the 5 minutes with these close games, you have to play well and play some really good defense, and Gonzaga was able to do such. And West Virginia, they tried. I was actually very surprised at how close this game was, but they could not get a shot down to save their fucking lives. I think with 5 minutes left, their shooting percentage was actually 25% from the field, which is amazingly bad, and I don't even know how they were still in this game by this point. If I can pull it up, maybe I'll put it up here later. But it's just, here it is. They were just an absolutely trash team. I guess I can't find the percent. 26.7. They ended up with 26.7 from the field. Gonzaga, who's done more than half their games this season with 50% from the field, went 40.9% from the field. So I don't know how that works. West Virginia shot in shockingly 21.7% from three-point land. So they weren't able to really hit on any level. They played really good defense. They were able to get a lot of rebounds, but they couldn't find the mark, and that's the reason they lost. Gonzaga didn't really play an impressive game, in my opinion. It was just West Virginia couldn't knock anything down, and Gonzaga is going to move on to the Elite Eight. So, Mitch, what did you see out of this game?
I saw a couple things that kind of not shocked me, but if I'm Gonzaga and I'm a Gonzaga fan and I have them in my bracket, which I do, I'm a little bit concerned leaving this game because I thought they got outworked, and more importantly, I thought they got outcoached. Yeah. West Virginia was pressing super hard all game long, and this was a really nice game to watch, I thought, because it was so defensive, and it's really it doesn't happen that often that a game is this defensive. Like you said, it's 26.7%. Gonzaga's defense was unreal. The only guy that could do anything for West Virginia, it almost seemed like a high school basketball game.
They really did.
One player is good and one player can score. He was the only guy that was doing anything, and even then, he shot less than 50%. But he took a lot of shots. He ended up with 21, but he was by far the best player on West Virginia offensively. Gonzaga had a few contributors there, but they didn't shoot much better, 40%, a little bit more consistent, but they only ended up winning by 3 points because they were constantly turning the ball over. They were under a lot of duress. They made a lot of stupid mistakes, and a lot of that had to do with West Virginia's game plan, their pressure, their speed, and their defense, which has been really impressive. And we went into this game thinking, Gonzaga is going to have a challenge in this game because they're going to need to get past this West Virginia defense. That's exactly what we said in our preview, and that's what ended up happening. I thought it would be a close game. It ended up being a close game, but Gonzaga, at the end of the day, as much effort as West Virginia out-effort Gonzaga and out-coached Gonzaga, at the end of the day, the talent of Gonzaga trumped the effort and the coaching of West Virginia at the very end of the day with the 3-point win. And that's basically what I took from it. Gonzaga was just the more talented team with more talented players. I would be a little bit concerned, again, if I was a fan of Gonzaga, because, again, I think you need to have some plays here and there that can get these talented players and can separate you from the pack. West Virginia is a good team, don't get me wrong, but what's going to happen, let's say, if Gonzaga ends up facing a team that's just as physically talented as them, like a Kansas? What's going to happen then? Are you going to get out coached? Are you going to come up with a few plays to put your players into position to succeed? And I just didn't see that here. Gonzaga is supposed to be a great offensive team, and they basically got shut down, and it was thanks to their defense why they won. Now, I will give them the bonus, Dylan, that you do need to win some scrappy games to get the championship every once in a while. Yeah, you need to rely on your defense every once in a while to win these games. But at the very same time, I wasn't very impressed with Gonzaga leaving this game. I was more impressed with West Virginia. And even though I had Gonzaga winning my March Madness, I feel like I was cheering for West Virginia because they were playing better and they were playing harder to me.
Interesting. They're conflicting things because in one of my other brackets that I got money on the line, I predicted Oregon, and then here I talked about picking Michigan. So I didn't know how to feel about that. Oregon won, so money's still on the table for me. Not my pride on this channel because that's gone. But, Gonzaga, it's interesting to see. Are they going to be dominant? We're going to talk about their opponent because their opponent was made tonight, and that's going to be a very interesting matchup. So we'll talk about that later on. But maybe West Virginia showed some weaknesses of a Gonzaga team. And for the rest of the field, maybe that's a positive. So interesting game that we had there, a 3-point win for Gonzaga. You know what's not 3 points, but more like 32 points? Kansas's win over Purdue, 98-66. Holy shit. So as I'm watching this game, I was actually just tuned in to the game literally as Kansas got their first lead of the game because the West Virginia Gonzaga game was happening and finishing up, and I needed to watch that first. I come on, Kansas just got their first lead. Purdue was on them a little bit at the beginning. They were actually, they were scoring a lot, playing some good defense, trying to be competitive with Kansas. And I said, if you're going to beat Kansas, you have to start out with a good lead. And that's exactly what they did. And then with 6:24 left to play in the first half, from that point on, Kansas made a 73-33 run. What the fuck? How did this? Where did this even happen? Like, I don't understand how a team.
Again, I just saw like a team that was just physically more gifted, and like their athletes won them the game.
73-33.
Yeah, bro, they absolutely dominated, and especially like in the fast break. There's like physical dominance just won the game. Like literally, I'm not even kidding you. Like it sounds like lame analysis, but legitimately that's what it came down to. Kansas was bigger, Kansas was stronger, Kansas was faster, and Kansas made the plays. I mean, as simple as that. Purdue, they only had one player that did anything, and that was Swanigan.
Their star player.
Big E. That's what they call him. I saw that little take on him or whatever. That was pretty good. I liked it. He had 18 points, but he turned the ball over 6 times because he was the only player that was doing anything. He shot 3 for 4 from 3, which he's a big guy. That's pretty impressive. And 6 for 11 from field goal range. But, look at Kansas. They had 2 guys with 26 points. They were rebounding the ball like freaking maniacs. I mean, 12 rebounds for Jackson, 7 for Mason. They were rebounding, especially like offensively, like offensive rebounds. They were getting a bunch. And it was just a hard game to watch because Kansas was just super superior.
It was kind of fun to watch because the crowd was really into it. But then it got to a certain point, you're like, oh, fuck. I got to turn on the Xavier Arizona game on now. It's starting. Yeah. And I was like, you know what? I don't like to watch the start of the games because they kind of have to pick up. But it was like 2 minutes into the other game, and I'm like, bro, this is already a 20-point.
I know. That's how I feel, Dylan. I find it hard to watch the beginning of basketball games. It's hard to get into it until, at least the second quarter, especially NBA, because NBA is like, okay, nobody's playing defense yet. But, yeah.
In this game in particular, there's the fast break, like Mitch said, too much to handle for Purdue. Frank Mason looked like he was on top of his game, and we're going to see an interesting matchup between Kansas and Oregon on Saturday for the Elite Eight. Tyler Dorsey, Frank Mason, 2 superstars kind of in the making. We'll see how that matchup goes.
Also, bro, I got to bring up this point. 53% from 3-point for Kansas. That includes 4 for 5 for Mason, 5 for 9 from Graham, 2 for 5 for Jackson. So they shot really well from 3 as well.
And this is something that's going to be very scary for the rest of the tournament, and especially Oregon. Kansas has at least scored 90 points in each of their 3 tourney games.
That's crazy.
They have not given up more than 70 in their tournament games. So
scoring over 90 in March Madness is insane.
That's pretty crazy. And doing it 3 times in a row, I'm not saying it's unheard of. It's probably been done. But in modern March Madness, where everything's on the line and there's defense, Kansas is absolutely killing the offensive game. So congratulations to them. They're moving on against Oregon in a pretty interesting Elite Eight matchup. Finally, our final game of day 1 of Sweet 16. Don't worry, we'll be back on tomorrow. Xavier with the upset. How the hell is Bill Murray leading these teams to success? He was at the Cubs. They got the World Series. Xavier now moving on to the Elite Eight, which is weird. Both
Who are you
Xavier,
going to call?
Ghostbusters. You got to get Bill Murray in there. Well, you know what's weird is Xavier and Gonzaga have the 2 longest stretches or 2 longest records of not making an appearance in the Final Four, but being in the tournament. And they're both in the Elite Eight this year. So interesting. Maybe one of those teams is going to get in. It was weird. It was a very competitive back and forth matchup. This is probably the most competitive of any one, and I'm no discredit to the other 2, but there were some stretches maybe you could see one team pulling away and then a huge comeback, but this was pretty steady back and forth action. You really saw the hype that Xavier was getting for them, and you were really interested to see how they were going to respond and make the haters or the doubters believe in their team. Trayvon Bullier, 25 points, 9 of 17 from the field, so he had a good day for himself for Xavier. A couple of other people, is that how you say it? Makira? I believe that's how you say it. The white boy. Makira, the white boy.
Yeah, the white boy, man. He was putting on a show. He was representing us white boys.
Yes, because white boys in basketball don't really work out. But, they're really great in college. They're really great.
I know, it's weird. They can't jump, though.
They can't. 14 points for him with 7 rebounds and 5 assists. So he had a good night for himself. Arizona, they had 2 scorers in double digits, and that's it. They tried, they had some good opportunities at times, and 71-63 it was at one point. It was legitimately 73 or 71-63. 10-0 run to end it off for Xavier, and at the very last point, Arizona had a chance, and Xavier got the steal and all that stuff to get it down the court and capture their Elite Eight appearance. So, Xavier, they didn't take a lot of shots. They didn't take a lot of risk, but when they made the shots, they were effective, and they were really persistent in getting it done. Arizona took a crap ton of shots tonight, and they missed a lot. And Xavier was able to capitalize off the turnovers and the bad shots that Arizona would take and make it into some worthy points. And they also had some pretty key threes late in the game. So overall, I was very interested. Xavier put on a really good performance against one of the better shooting teams in the country that are left. And now that they're gone, it's going to be interesting to see who's going to pick it up. But Xavier, impressive, and maybe makes more shockwaves in the tournament. Mitch, what did you see out of this final game?
I saw a team that is molding before our eyes. Xavier looked really good. And this was an example of the one game that I saw where the team with less talent won.
Yeah.
The team beat the individuals in this game. And I think that this is something that I always see in college basketball. When a team defensively plays a really good zone, it kind of masks your players, because when you're playing a zone defense, you don't have to rely a lot on one-on-one defense because you always have help because it's a zone. So it's a team thing, and that's what they really had in this game. Arizona wasn't able to shoot. You said they're one of the better shooting teams in the country this year. They were 7 from 20 for 27 from 3. That's including 2 players who 3 for 10, 1 for 6. These are not good numbers, bro.
Terrible.
Why do you keep shooting these threes, man?
That's just the lifestyle of the college NBA or college.
I know, but Arizona, it just seemed like they're forcing them sometimes. Like they're not there and they're not there. And sometimes Xavier would give it up because they're like, oh, these guys aren't making their shots. Like, we're gonna just give this up. I think they switched a lot to. We were talking about how they play the 1-3-1. They were playing more of like a 2-3 defense this game, which was interesting. Xavier offensively, I thought pretty much they played as good as they could have. I mean, Their top guys played like their top guys. Mercura was kind of like the guy that came out of nowhere. He played really well, especially passing the ball. He had 5 assists and had 7 rebounds. I just saw Xavier, and even though I had Arizona in the bracket, I was cheering for Xavier. First of all, they're the 11 seed versus the 2 seed. And second of all, they just seemed like the team that was like effort. You saw them run like down the court and then back. And then, it was just Arizona just got outplayed by a team that tried harder, was, better coached, and more of a team than the individuals of Arizona. To me, that's what I saw.
Yeah, I mean, you saw this team obviously is very scrappy. They want to get the run that they deserve because they showed it in the game, and I thought it was interesting. They showed last year how they were eliminated in the round of 32 on a pretty impressive shot by Wisconsin's own Koenig, whatever you want to call them, because I can't pronounce names. But they're both in the suite, and they're both, well, one's trying to make another Elite Eight run, and Xavier, who was a way better team last year, didn't make it to this point, but now as an 11 seed are. It's all chances. NBA or basketball is all a bunch of luck at times. But Xavier moving on, they played the more team-worthy game, and that's what gets them the win. That's impressive.
I will give a shout out. Xavier, I thought Bernard played really well. He was 5 for 6 with 3 threes. A lot of that coming in the fourth quarter. Had 15 points, 6 rebounds. He played really well. Was hit like I think 2 threes in a row, which was huge at the end of the game. Yes. And a guy that I thought sucked for Arizona was Markkanen, the big white guy. He was.
White guy's not showing up today. I don't know.
He was 3 for 9, 1 for 6 for 3. He had 8 rebounds and 1 steal and 9 points, but I just thought he was really ineffective with his shot, and he wasn't dominating down low like he was supposed to. So a couple players here and there for Xavier that had some good performances. On the opposite side, Arizona didn't have those good performances.
And that's the difference. Xavier's moving on, and Arizona couldn't pull out the win. Maybe Arizona is one of those teams that continually knows how to choke quite a bit.
Maybe.
Xavier, you know who Xavier is playing on Saturday? You know who they're going to go against?
Who are they playing, bro?
They're playing number 1 seed Gonzaga, baby, and that's going to be an interesting matchup. I'm really looking forward to this one. Actually.
Yeah, me too. I'll probably be watching that game the closest.
Yeah.
I do have Gonzaga in my bracket, but man, I'm going to be cheering for Xavier.
Yeah, I mean, you want these smaller teams to win, but we saw the weaknesses of Gonzaga. We saw how you can beat them. They only put up 61 points against a West Virginia team. You never really know. Xavier might be pulling out something. So 2 interesting Elite Eight matchups were made tonight. I'll give a recap of the scores and how we thought about them, and then preview tomorrow's games. 7 seed Michigan, 3 seed Oregon. Oregon picks out the 1-point victory in one of the sloppier games of the tournament. And Oregon might have their destruction sealed on Saturday against Kansas. Number 4 seed West Virginia versus number 1 seed Gonzaga. 61 to 58 Gonzaga. Gonzaga didn't really play like that 1 seed you're expecting. Maybe they could be the choke artist come the Elite Eight with an arriving team or a new entrance team that we'll talk about in a minute. But Gonzaga, they were able to get the scrappy victory. Might have been outcoached and outplayed, but a win's a win, I guess. Number 4, Purdue versus number 1, Kansas. Kansas absolutely killing Purdue at 98 to 66. Kansas looking like one of the best teams in the tournament left. Their offensive machines at least scoring 90 points in all 3 games of the tournament and haven't given up more than 70 in the defensive system. So that's absolutely crazy. Look forward for Kansas to do something, of course. And then Xavier, 11 seed versus 2 seed Arizona. 2-point victory for Xavier. It's a nice win. These guys played with a team as a cohesive unit, and did a really good job of playing against a shooting team like Arizona and picking up the W. We also have for tomorrow's games, we're going to be recapping. I'm going to try as much as I can to watch these games because work is really difficult to do that. But I will try my very best. Number 4 seed Butler versus number 1 seed North Carolina, starting up first at 6:09 Central Time. It's going to be a really good game. We talked about how Butler is very Interesting in this tournament how they're really going to try hard to beat North Carolina. North Carolina's trying to get back to their success they once had. 7 seed South Carolina versus 3 seed Baylor. We thought Baylor was going to choke either in the first or second round. They're on here to the Sweet 16, and South Carolina's in their first Sweet 16. So it's going to be interesting to see how they respond. The crowd's really hype into them. So basically, your two teams to look forward to in the lower categories are Xavier and South Carolina. Maybe South Carolina joins Xavier in the road to the Elite Eight. Number 3 seed UCLA versus number 2 seed Kentucky. If you heard LeVar Ball today on First Take, he had absolutely no idea what he was talking about and did not talk about this game. But we here at the Bottom Line View will talk about this game and not say we're better than Michael Jordan one-on-one. I'm just putting that out there. Lonzo Ball going to run his offense and not LeVar's offense down the court and try to do something explosive against a Kentucky team that knows how to win. And then at the end of the night, 8 seed Wisconsin versus number 4 seed Florida. Wisconsin trying to make an upset run as well. They've been playing some good offense, good shooting attacks. Florida has played some really good defensive games, including the lowest scoring team against them in the tournament so far, 39 points. I don't know how much that was to their defense or how shitty Virginia was, but it's going to be interesting to see how they respond because they're not that great at scoring in this tournament. So it's going to be interesting to see. Real quick, which one of these 4 games, Mitch, are you really expecting to be the game of the night?
The game of the night, bro. Well, you know what I said last time. I don't think this will be the game of the night, but the team I'm looking forward to seeing how they do is Florida, because I just think that defense could be an X factor in the tournament. So I kind of want to see how they perform.
Interesting. I'm not that key on Florida. I think Wisconsin.
I know. You said they'll lose.
I predicted Wisconsin.
Plus, I like Wisconsin a little bit, so I think that's gonna be entertaining. Of course, all the eyes will be on the UCLA Kentucky game. That will be interesting. But you got to look out for UNC and Butler. That'll probably be a good game as well.
Yeah, I think all 4 games will be entertaining, and one of them maybe not be the least entertaining. But we're looking for the matchup and the outcome for South Carolina and Baylor. So I think all 4 games are going to have some talking points at the end, which you can join us once again around this time tomorrow. I won't be able to try to rush it because, it's the next day, Saturday, and I have to go to school after this. So, I tried my very best to get this as soon as possible. Well, we did do a good recap here of March Madness Sweet 16. It's plug time here on the Bottom Line View. Mitch, you got anything to plug?
Yes, I do. WrestleMania 21 Retro Review will be out tomorrow. I'm going to be filming right after this video a Aaron Rodgers versus Tom Brady, who is the best quarterback in the 2010s video. That will be out probably rather this weekend or on Monday. A lot more NFL, WWE stuff coming, of course, with WrestleMania coming up, and March Madness. So stay tuned, guys.
Ooh, that Brady Rodgers video is going to be a banger. I already know the answer to this question, but I'll leave you guys at home to watch that. Of course, like Mitch said, March Madness is still a-rolling. We could not get a C on today. I know I promised it, but I promise, guys, tomorrow AC is going to join us for the Friday recaps. We let him have one more day of rest before, yes, the money is coming back in. The analyst, the one that gets in more than any of us here on the Bottom Line View about March Madness, will be on tomorrow. So stay tuned for his return to the channel. You got to build it up and shit. We got more of that. The Elite Eight this weekend. We'll be talking about that. At least a Sunday recap at the end of the night to talk about Elite Eight action. And then I'll pass the reins over to AC to take it over for the Final Four and National Championship game, which we can't do because we're going to be in Florida. And if you've heard me over the last 2 weeks, I haven't shut the hell up about the video series. So I'm going to promote it one more time. First off, like Mitch said, we got the WrestleMania 21 podcast that he so kindly edited for me, and I hosted, so I appreciate it. And next week, we're going to have WrestleMania 23 review that was also edited by Mitch. Thank you very much. And then we're going to have the weekend. You already know what it is after the Hall of Fame on Friday. We got the We the People podcast. I'll have the questions out on all the topics we're going to discuss on Monday during the Raw review. So stay tuned. You might want to hear about that and get excited to talk in the live chat. There might be a little Q&A in there. So stay tuned for that. TakeOver, WrestleMania, Raw, SmackDown. You already know. If you didn't already know and want to get a little bit more in the description, you can go check out the WrestleMania announcement video. Macho Man makes a special guest. I don't know how he did it, but we're 1 week away from that, so I'm pretty hyped about that. But more content still coming out of the way right before that. Thank you guys for 2,250 subscribers. We just got that today, so let's keep it going. Hit that subscribe button, like, comment, do what you want, but we appreciate you guys clicking on the video. It's Mitch and Dylan of the Bottom Line.